Hey, and in this video I'm going to share with you 5 simple tests you can do to test your physical health. And by having these tests on hand, you can have a good sense of where you are at in physical terms. Most of them you can do at home, whilst others require very little equipment. I think we can all agree there is a regular gap between perception and reality. Studies show we regularly place ourselves as more intelligent than the average. We frequently underreport how much food we have and overestimate how much energy we expend when we work out. So it's no surprise this optimism extends to our health as well. In one poll, 60% of Americans consider themselves to be healthy, despite over 70% of adults being classed as overweight or obese and 48% having some form of cardiovascular disease. Not to be outperformed, in another poll, a staggering 95% of Chinese considered themselves to be very healthy. This is despite 110 million, 10% of the population, has diabetes. So it is clear we possess a lot of cognitive dissonance when thinking about our physical health. It's common to experience something that I like to call the reverse Texas sharpshooter effect. The Texas sharpshooter effect is a cognitive bias where you highlight examples to motivate you to pursue something while omitting information that signals differences in your examples. This is common when starting a business and you see Elon Musk making billions, the founders of Instagram being bought and the founders turning billionaires overnight, and people on Instagram posting pictures and earning millions. What you don't see or fail to see is the thousands of people who have tried and failed to start a business, build an app and post on Instagram and earn nothing. In terms of health, someone might justify not changing by saying, well, Dave smoked 60 a day and he lived till he was 70. I'm much healthier than him. What that person is omitting, all of those people who smoked even less than 60 a day and died of lung cancer in their 50s. This is why I like a little test to measure physical health. It provides you with markers to see where you are at. Now, these tests don't diagnose anything. They merely point you in a direction you might want to explore more or improve upon. So the 5 tests are 1, the get up test, 2, the VO2 Max test, 3, the step up test, 4, the jump test, and 5, the hip to waist ratio. So number 1, the get up test. The rule of this is simple. Can you get up and down off the floor without using your hands and elbows? In the video I showed 2 methods, one labelled the sit to stand test and the other is the standard get up test. We're almost like a bastardized version of an exercise called the Turkish get up. The sit to stand is sometimes called the longevity test. Devised by a Brazilian physician called Claudio Gil Araújo as an evaluation of balance, flexibility and strength. You start from a standing position and you lower yourself to the floor and then rise back up again without any support from the wall or additional limbs. You start with a score of 10. You subtract points from the following. If hands are used for support, you take away a point. If knees are used for support, you take away a point. If your forearm is used for support, you take away a point. If one hand is on the knee or thigh, you take away a point. If the side of your leg is used for support, you take away a point. Now, Araújo tested over 2,000 patients between the ages of 51 and 80, and the test found that individuals who scored fewer than 8 points on the test were twice as likely to die within the next 6 years compared to those who scored higher. Those who scored 3 or fewer points were more than 5 times as likely to die within the same period compared with those who scored more than 8 points. Now, having worked with a number of clients over the years, from people in their 20s right up to their 80s, I can tell you that the method Araújo uses is actually quite difficult whatever age you are. It requires a good level of hip mobility and knee strength, and with physical inactivity being the scrounge of many from childhood upwards, it is a challenging move for many. This is why I have a second version. It is important to still not use your hands and be sure you are not around anything you can bang your head on as you come down. As you go down and up, the rule of thumb is A, don't use your arms for support, and B, if someone said freeze, you could actually stop exactly as you are. Number 2, the VO2 Max test. The VO2 Max test refers to the maximum amount of oxygen you can utilize during intense or maximal exercise. It is a common test to measure aerobic fitness. Whilst many do some kind of cardio exercise like running when they want to get fitter, very few test their aerobic ability outside of maybe trying to beat their 5k running time. With a VO2 Max test, you get a good accurate measure of where you are at an aerobic level at a given time. The downside is you need equipment, and this tends to be a treadmill, an exercise bike or a rower. A simple way of testing your VO2 Max test for running is known as the Cooper test, and it is to run for 12 minutes where you measure your distance at the end. Obviously, the aim is to go as fast as possible and as far as possible. Remember to raise the treadmill by one incline to mimic more outdoor running. If you have access to a rower, Concept 2 has a simple VO2 Max test you can take where you aim to complete 2,000 meters as quickly as possible. Now in the description box below, I'll provide a link to where you can measure your scores for both running and rowing. Test number 3 is the step-up test. The step-up test is also a measure of aerobic fitness but from the perspective of recovery time. A good measure of fitness is the speed at which your heart recovers back to resting heart rate following a period of strenuous exercise. Whilst the body can withstand a lot, you wouldn't want your heart at near maximal heart rate an hour after you've done something strenuous. It would be a good indicator that something is definitely not right. Now the beauty of this test is that you can do it at home if you have a box or something similar at a height of around 12 inches. The way the test works is for 3 minutes you step onto the box with one foot and come down with the other foot as vigorously as you can whilst maintaining control. After 3 minutes you stay standing and take your pulse or with a heart rate monitor for 1 minute. The objective is to have as low a heart rate as possible, within reason of course, after a minute. You would take a heart rate at a minute and you can see your score in the chart that are linked in the description box below. Number 4, the jump test. Now one of the interesting phenomena I've experienced in personal training clients for over 10 years is the difficulty many have in their ability to jump. They can either not jump very high at all or be very thuddy, which isn't an actual word, but you know what I mean. And it's thuddy when they land. Of course, this is perfectly understandable. Unless you go to a rock gig every weekend or engage in a sport that requires jumping, where in life are you required to regularly jump? But the ability to jump is a good indicator of power and strength in some of the biggest muscles of your body, namely your glutes and quadriceps. By regularly improving your jump potential, this lends itself well to your ability to squat and deadlift, which are two exercises you'll want to be incorporating into your exercise repertoire on a weekly basis. So to test your jump, all you need is a wall and the ability to measure what height you've jumped to. What you do is stand next to the wall and reach up with your arm and mark where your arm reaches to. This is known as the standing reach. Now step away slightly from the wall and by bending your knees, launch off the floor, extending your arm and mark the height where you jump to. The distance between the two marks are where you record, and you do 3 attempts with the best one being your score. Now in the description box below, I'll share a link to your score. So the last test is the hip to waist ratio. Now there is a lot of controversy around weight, BMI and whether you can be overweight and fit. Now, if you consider that fitness can be defined as your ability to perform a physical task to a defined standard, then it is possible to be considered overweight and fit. However, if we were to incorporate physical fitness into health, then long term it becomes a lot murkier, especially when looking at waist circumference in relation to hips. Now, there is a decent amount of evidence showing that there's correlation between waist circumference in relation to hips and heart disease. For this reason, it is wise to regularly monitor your hip to waist ratio, especially for post 40 years old, when your metabolism slows and weight can increase gradually. This is a simple test. All you have to do is measure your waist circumference at its widest point, usually over the belly button, and then measure your hip circumference at its widest point. You will then divide your waist score by your hip score to get your hip to waist score. In the description box below, I will provide a link to a chart and a calculator where you can see your score and how it's graded. So these are 5 quick tests you can use to get a snapshot of your physical health. In the comments box below, I'd love to hear your scores and what you would like to do to increase your physical health. And be sure to subscribe to the Fit by Health channel, where I share the latest tools, tactics and strategies to increase your health and fitness even when you're busy. So until then, I'll see you in the next video.